Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Today's session is part of the Fall 2015 BI and Reporting webcast series from MSDynamicsWorld.com. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us for today's event is Noah Moseley of MSX Group. Noah was with us yesterday for a session on Management Reporter, and we're glad to have him back today. We should have a recording of that previous session posted to the site quite soon, and we'll keep everyone updated. I'm guessing many of you had also registered for that event. But for those of you who don't know Noah, he's a veteran financial reporting consultant for Microsoft Dynamics. He's got experience with Management Reporter as well as Forecaster and FRX. He runs quite a few sessions for us over time, and it's always great to have him back. I also want to recognize our site's sponsors for BI and reporting webcasting. They are De Facto and Jet Reports. So as we get started, please know that you can add your feedback and ask questions using the Q&A block that you should see to the right of the slides in the WebEx window today. And without further delay, I'm going to hand things off to Noah Moseley. Noah, are you there?
I am. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. Switch over to my slide deck here. I've got my Leadin Slide here, forecast for Microsoft Dynamics ERP. If you have outgrown budgeting in Excel, Microsoft is a great alternative to budgeting in Excel. So that's what we're going to talk about for this hour for us today. A little bit about my company. I'm with the MSX Group. We are a consulting practice. We specialize in really just 3 products: Management Reporter, Forecaster, and FRX. We handle those for all of the Dynamics ERP solutions, AX, GP, NAV, and SL. We offer consulting services for these products, training classes, webinars just like this, software support. So if you need me or assistance after today's session, feel free to email me, which is the best way to get in touch with me, at noah.moseley@msxgroup.com. The slide deck, Jason will make available after the recording is released. You'll have that as well to come back to. So for anybody who is still currently budgeting in Excel, there are several things that eventually catch up with you. If you are building more and more templates, you're involving more and more managers in the budgeting process, at some point Excel just becomes a huge hassle to deal with for the budget. As a budget administrator, you've got to go out and make all your Excel templates, handling all the calculations for those templates, all the account rows that you need included on the templates, and then email those out to all your budget managers. Then you just got to wait for those budget managers to do some work on those files and send them back to you. And once you do get the Excel files back from budget managers, then you've got to get all those files into a consolidated Excel file so you can have one consolidated budget. And then you've got to eventually get it into some way to compare it to your actuals. So some huge hurdles there. And if you decide, well, you've got to add some accounts halfway through, you've got to redo your templates, email it back out to the budget managers, can be a huge ordeal. And Forecaster gives us easy ways to handle all these scenarios inside the Forecaster application. So I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes, just a few slides to walk us through here to make sure that we're all under a equal footing about what Forecaster does for us. And in just webinar agenda, we'll look at building budget templates for input for your budget managers, how to assign those templates to your budget managers so they have access to them. We'll look at how a budget administrator can monitor the entire process, so you'll see how everything is progressing. We'll also look at the detailed input screens for payroll, capital, and revenue input screens, and how easy it is for these consolidated budgets to roll up together. The overhead overview for Forecaster, what does that do for us? Microsoft has released Forecaster as their application for budgeting for all of the Dynamics ERP solutions. You can use this for your annual budgets. You can reforecast using Forecaster or any planning options quarterly, monthly, as frequently as you need to. Everything is stored in a single SQL database that all your budget managers share. And Forecaster is a separate application. It's not Excel-based, so it's a standalone application that you have separate from the GL from Excel. benefits by using Forecaster, handling your budgets inside Forecaster. Your users will be pretty comfortable with it. These are spreadsheet-style user interfaces, so your budget managers go to input. They have columns and rows just like they're used to from Excel. So easy interface for them to input their balances. Everything has security and workflow tied to it. Every user has a user login ID and password, and we control what input screens they have access to, what reports and everything else inside the application. Workflow, all your budget managers, they work on their budgets. At some point, they want to submit those so that you can review them. Forecaster has built-in workflows so that you, as a budget administrator, will see everybody who's still working on the budgets. You'll see everybody that has submitted their budgets, and you'll see all their statuses, either accepted or rejected or all the way completed. As soon as your budget managers click the Save icon on their input screens, all the data is instantly consolidated and available for reporting inside Forecaster, and it's also available automatically to compare against any actuals you've got in Forecaster. So easy for those reports as soon as they click the Save icon. It's on the detailed budgeting section inside Forecaster, you'll have detail pages for capital input, where your users, your budget managers can budget for new assets for next year, ways to easily break down how to budget for revenue detail for those budget managers, and your HR. So we can import all of your existing employees, and your budget managers can plan for pay changes next year and for any new hires as well. And your budget managers, they can either access Forecaster through the application, it might be installed on their desktop, or they can go through web access just using Internet Explorer. A couple of different components that get installed with Forecaster. It's not a very heavy system on your desktop. You do have a small desktop application that accesses everything in that SQL database. There is web access if you want to roll this out so your budget managers can input their budgets using web access. And there is an Excel add-in, so if you do have some stuff that is going to be continued inside Excel, there is an add-in that will let you save data back to the Forecaster database. And Excel can also, using that add-in, pull data from the Forecaster database. So back and forth with Excel as well. Everything is stored in that one SQL database based on your chart of accounts from your general ledger system. And security is all based off of Windows authentication or standard SQL authentication. But every user that has access to the budget will have their own logins for Forecaster. Now, let me take us over to the application so you'll get a feel for everything inside Forecaster. As I go through, if you have questions about a certain point, just type those in that Q&A section on the right. Jason is helping me watch those as we go through, and he'll stop me if something relates to something I'm looking at currently here.
No, we do have one question that already came in.
Okay.
Does Forecaster replace budget planning in AX?
So budget planning and AX, they are different. All right, so Microsoft is developing budgeting inside AX. It's completely different look and feel from what you have here in Forecaster, so they're separate intentions. This one right here, Forecaster, is really intended if you want to roll this out to your budget managers, let them have an easy interface to type in balances and save that in an application that gets stored in a SQL database. So separate from the AX budgeting there. Thanks, sir. So looking at Forecaster, let's look at what your budget managers would have done for input into last year's budget. So they would have gone to data input. I've got the budget 2015 listed. I'll click OK, so that screen opens up for us. And they would have done this, finished it. It's all been approved. Sorry, I have my columns wrong there, but this is their main input screen for multi-row. So you have 5 tabs across the top: multi-row, single-row, human resources, capital, and revenue. All those are input screens for this one department. And I can see the department listed at the very top, New York Manufacturing, Department 11010. So all this money is tied to that department. they would have gone through here last year, done all this input, a lot of calculations, and saved it for us. When they go through here and they're typing in balances and spreading balances back across the month, easy input for them. Let me show a few tips and tricks for on this page for input. Looking at production supplies here towards the bottom. They can type in balances directly to any of the individual columns for this row. They can do calculations just like in Excel, they do equal sign and the formula there. Easy to add those. Copy and grow functions, if they put up $100 in an asterisk, when they press enter, every column to the right will have that same balance in it. And they can also increase or decrease by percentages. So if I do 100 greater than symbol 10 and the percent sign, when I press enter, every column to the right will increase by 10%. So easy options for their data input there. I was just typing in some monthly balances. Annual balances are fine as well. This row, production supplies, if I go to the annual total on the right, if I type in $10,000, press enter, that spreads that money back across the months for us. And annual amounts, as a default, are spread back evenly across the months, but your managers could use spread methods and have that money spread in any other or variety of spread methods that they want to set up. So if I go to this icon at the top for spread methods, I can take this drop-down option for spread methods. I can spread that annual amount on the baseline, and the baseline might be last year's actuals or last year's budget or anything else. You can spread it based on the value of some other account, which might be revenue each month. Or you can set up other options. We've set up a 4-4-5 spread, a seasonal spread, and a working days spread. So whatever you select, that annual amount is spread back across the months based on those spread method options. Once they do spread that back, forecaster spreads the money, puts an S on that left-hand margin so I know this row has a spread method tied to it. And if I look at the bottom right, it says it's working days, I can see what the spread method is for that row. So easy options for inputting to the individual months, easy options for calculations, spread methods, increasing, decreasing across the months, and spreading back annual amounts. Another handy trick for you is look at this travel account. I've got a plus icon on that left-hand margin. Your budget managers, they often want to add more detail or more rows to their Excel templates. That might throw you off when you get those Excel files back and are working on consolidation. There's an easy option here in Forecaster where they can add additional rows of detail for that account without having to call and ask you to add it for them, and it does not mess up your consolidations. They'll go on any row that's available for input. They'll double-click on that row, and it opens up, shows you all the detail rows that have already been added, and they can add more rows here with the plus icon at the top. They'll click that plus icon, tell Forecaster how many rows they want to add to that account row. It adds that new row with a default description. You just type in the detail or type over that default text and enter the dollar amounts in whatever month it should go into. So line item details is a great way for your budget managers to add details to these account rows without having to call you and say, hey, I need some more rows here, messing up your templates. When you double-click this travel account row, it will collapse those rows of details, add up the new balance, and adjust the total. So a great way for that to get more details on there for those accounts. Often they'll want to add memos or notes to these input streams as well. Easy done inside Forecaster. I can see one here with an exclamation mark on the training row. So I know that someone's already added a comment to that row. So to pull that back up, I'll click the icon at the top for memo. And that text comes up, shows you what they added. The memos that you add to these input rows, you can pull those into reports, print those out, so you'll have that handy when you're reviewing the budget. And if you have your cursor on that row, the text also displays at the bottom left here. Easy options for data input there. When you define these screens as a budget administrator, you decide what accounts are listed in the left-hand side. You decide what formulas are available on these rows. You can even do formulas for individual cells, just like you do in Excel. You decide what columns are displayed, where you want the annual amounts. If you need more than just 12 columns a month, you can handle as many months here or many columns as you need to. Your budget managers will have at least this input screen for data input. This is the multi-row, which is your default input screen. The others are optional, but they do come in very handy. You've got single row, which is a different way of looking at that same data. We're still in the same department, New York Manufacturing. I'll select whatever account you want to budget for. Forecaster shows you a baseline column, which could be last year's actuals or last year's budget or whatever you want to set as the baseline. You've got an input column for the new budget amounts, and the months go down the left-hand side here. And Forecaster tracks a dollar difference between the two and a percent difference on an individual monthly basis or on the annual row at the bottom. So if you want to have everything change, go up by 10%, at the bottom I'll just type in 10, press enter, and it adjusts all the new budget balances by that percentage. So easy way to keep track and budget by dollar changes from the baseline or percent changes from the baseline. You've also got the tab for human resources where you typically would have imported all of your existing employees for this department. Your budget managers come in here, make changes for pay rates. Is that employee going to work the entire year or just part of the year, start and end periods? Do they get pay raises? Do they get bonus amounts? What state to help you calculate taxes? Do you have medical coverage? All this detail helps this budget manager budget for their department all the wages, taxes, and benefits, and that goes back to the budget for Forecaster for this department. And this would be for typically all your existing employees are imported at the start of the budget cycle. And then if they want to plan for new hires or reductions, they can make those changes here as well. Capital, and a separate tab at the top here where your budget manager comes into this page. We're still in the same department, New York Manufacturing. They'll add new rows for any new assets they plan to purchase for next year. They can add as many rows here as they need to without having to call you. They'll just add the rows here, as many as they need. Add the details, whatever it is they're going to purchase. The capital type for that vehicle. And there's only 4 listed, but you can add as many here as you need to. I'll go back to laptops. When they intend to purchase those assets, when to start depreciation expense, the individual cost of those assets, and how many they plan to purchase. Forecaster uses that, books the cost to the cost account, and calculates depreciation expense for that new asset. Looking at the tab for revenue, again, this revenue tab is an optional tab, but it does help you come in here and break down how your budget manager calculates their revenue. And although it says revenue, you could change that terminology and use it for any other practice, even expenses. So this page here, you can define this to have as many rows on the left-hand side as you need to, with whatever calculations you need to come up with. We're still in that same department, New York Manufacturing. And there's 2 additional options here. There's a market and there's a list of products or customers. You can change that terminology. Your budget manager selects whatever markets they have access to budget for and whatever customers or products they have available to budget for. And that pulls up the screen. They make the changes. This populates the revenue account or any other cost or expense accounts and gets saved in this department's budget. So a great way for you to add kind of like a supporting schedule for that department, a separate input screen. But it all goes back in that same SQL database that this one budget is all stored in. Now, as your budget managers last year went through all this process, they did the budget. They may have made a lot of changes. They may work on it several days. They save those as they go throughout. As soon as they click the save icon on these input screens, all those balances and details, they get stored back in the Forecaster SQL database, and the reports in Forecaster are consolidated right away. So you, as a budget administrator or anybody else has access to this, can pull those reports up and can see the consolidated totals right away. So you don't have to wait for people to email you files back and consolidate those files into one consolidated budget. Now, as your budget managers went through this process, they do a lot of work, they save it. At some point, they do want to have it marked as completed so it can be reviewed by the next person in the review process. And that's where Forecaster's workflow page comes into hand. So we'll go to this icon at the top right for workflow status. And I can see this is the budget 2015, New York Manufacturing Department. Right now, the status is in progress, but your budget manager would come in here, change that from in progress to submitted. And when they say that, that will lock their input screens from changes. And will also send an email to the next person in the review process, letting that person know that this budget manager is finished and it's available for them to review it. The next person, they'll review those balances, and then they can come back to workflow, and they can either change it from submitted to approved or rejected. If it is approved, the budget remains locked, sends an email to the next person in the review process. If they reject it, it unlocks it, sends an email back to the first person, letting them know that they need to make some changes to that budget. So a great way for them to keep track of the status here. And you, as the budget administrator, you come to the same page. You can pull up this list for the entire company at one time. You'll see all the departments listed and everybody's status on here. You'll have a long list probably when it's finished of in progress, completed, approved, rejected. So at any time you get a picture of who's doing what in the budget cycle. Let me grab some water here, Jason, see if any questions have come in for us.
No other questions right now, Noah.
All right, good deal. Thank you, sir. Let's look at the idea if you have done the budget here for 1 year. We're finished with that one. It was completed. We're getting ready for the next year. So I want to show you that process inside Forecaster. So instead of making a lot of different templates for input in Excel, Forecaster has wizards that can help you do that process here. And let's look at under Build and Columns. I have a column definition that has our periods or our months from last year all listed. Let's make a new one. So I have a new column definition listing our budget 2016 months, and I'll use that for our new input screen. And I'm going to build it for one time, and then that makes it available for all of the departments at one time. So I'll go in here, I'll click the plus icon, I'll call this budget 2016. Do okay here. There are wizards to help you build these as well. It's a blank screen for us. I'll just right click and I'm going to insert from a list of available options. So these are going to be periods or months for us. And I want to select budget 2016 periods. I'll highlight all of these months. And I do want to hold the control key on the keyboard. I want to pull one that is for budget 2016, the annual total. Click OK, so that pulls in there for us. So this has a list of all the months for us, budget 2016, annual total at the bottom. I'll just change that text so it says, I kept the wrong one there. Should have been 16. Total budget 2016. All right, so I have our column definition. We'll save this. Let me close out of these windows. And I want to look at using that column definition for a new input screen for the new budget year. So all of our input screens are under Setup and Budgets and Input Set. This window has a list of all the input screens we defined in the past. I've got Budget 2015, which is already completed. We used that one already. And I'm just going to use the Copy button to copy what I had set up from last year. I'll click Copy here. I'll make this 2016. Click OK there. This makes the new name 2016. I'll just change the label and switch out the column that I'm using to the new one that I just made. Okay, all that set up. Looking at the options, all the stuff would have been copied from last year. Shouldn't have to make any changes unless you drastically change how you're budgeting this year. I do want to make some of these available for HR. And then I'll click OK, and clicking OK will save all these settings. Now for that, to see what I've done so far, if I go to Data Input and look at Budget 2016, this opens up the new budget. I'm still in that same department I was looking at previously. Forecaster remembers that, New York Manufacturing. This is the new year, Budget 2016. I'm using the same list of accounts I used last year. I'll use the same calculations that I had last year. You can make changes if you need to, but that just made our new input screen ready for this new year. All your users are already set up inside Security. So if I look at Setup and Security, all of your budget managers are already available still here with their assigned departments. So unless you have people move responsibilities, they are still here with their same user IDs, same passwords, and their same department access. And I've got this set up so that every user, if I right-click and look at Properties, they have an input menu called Input. So that is listing what input sets they have access to, what budget years. And that is set up under Build and Menus. I got one for inputs, and this was for last year, budget 2015. I'll just change that to 16. And when they log in and they go to Data Input, they will see the option for Budget 2016. They'll be the only option they see for budgeting. Close that out for us. And back to that template that we just built. Now this template for New York Manufacturing, it's really applied to every department. So if I switch to a different department, this will have the same list of accounts, same calculations, same columns. So easy to switch that out. The next person will have theirs already. Okay. New York material handling for this department. You can have completely different sets of accounts, completely different calculations depending on the department. So that's easy to handle as well. And if you had done that in last year's budget, different departments had different accounts and different calculations. When I copied that input set from 2015 to 2016, all that gets copied as well. What we do not have in here is we don't have any account balances. We haven't brought in anything. You can copy things forward from last year to this year. We don't have anything under human resources for employees. Typically, you would import those from your payroll system starting out. Capital will be all blank, although when you add new assets, the capital type is already listed from last year. Same thing for revenue. All this will be set up according to last year. We'll copy that forward and get that set up in here using a wizard. So to get that populated for revenue, let me show you the wizards that are built into Forecaster. I'll close out of these windows. And I'll go to Tools and Wizards. There's an option to copy Plan Wizard. I'm going to copy certain information from last year's budget to this new budget I just set up. Where am I copying from? I'll copy from budget 2015. Where am I copying to? I'll copy to budget 2016. You can select certain things, or you can do this for the whole company at one time. And on this next page, what do I want to copy forward? You can copy forward anything that was in last year's budget. You can copy forward account balances. Let's take that off. Memos, notes from last year, you can bring those forward or take those off. Revenue data, HR detail data, all that can be copied from last year's budget to this year. And setup. So all this setup for HR, like salary grades, benefit calculations, exchange rates, all that can be copied from last year to this year as well. So easy process with this wizard to copy that forward to get your new input screens ready, or at least populated with something for your budget managers when they log in.
Hey, Noah, would this be a good point to take a couple questions?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you.
All right. Can budget amounts be changed after they are approved?
So if your budget managers go into workflow and let's go back a few to New York Manufacturing. If they submit this, okay, that will lock it from input. So nobody at that point can change it on the input screens. A budget administrator has other options for making changes to balances on the back end, like they can do journal entries, or they can do batches to change balances or import balances. But on the input screen, it's locked. If a budget manager wants to unlock an input screen, and so they can make changes to their budget that they had just submitted and locked, they can come back here, and after you submit it, an option for new status would be to withdraw it. So they could withdraw it and then make changes on the input screens. If they do withdraw it, it'll list it here as withdrawn, and then come back after they fix those balances and submit it again. So there are options to unlock if they need to make changes. Good one there.
All right. And does Forecaster have an integration with AX similar to management reporters, or is Forecaster more standalone?
Forecaster is standalone, so if you do want those budget balances back in AX, we export them from here, which is under Tools and Export, Posting Level Data, and then you would import that into AX if you need that in AX, or if you need those balances in Management Reporter. So it is an export from here back over to AX as an import.
All right, and one person asks, will you be discussing actuals, and can actuals come from different sources like Excel or GP?
Definitely. So anytime we start off a budget for a new client, we typically always bring in some actuals. That really helps us check the setup. So we'll import those balances for whatever period you want to bring into Forecaster, whatever range of months or years. We bring those in from like Excel files, Tools, Import, and bring that data into Forecaster, and you can see those actuals on input screens and reports at the same time. And if I go to my list of reports, for actuals, do I have one for actuals? Let me look at this one, fourth quarter forecast, total company. Right, so this one, January through September, we brought in actuals. So this would have been, these balances would have been exported from probably Management Reporter into an Excel file, and then we import to here. Easy process, because whatever you export or pull out of Management Reporter has your account numbers tied to it when we pull it out. Those same account numbers we use here in Forecaster, so like account 7690 would be the same cost of goods sold account that we would have used in GP or AX. So that gets exported from AX or GP to Excel, and we import that same account number into Forecaster. So a lot easier process of getting actuals into Forecaster than getting your your actuals into a consolidated Excel file. And when you bring in actuals, you can bring those in as frequently as you need to. You can bring it in to start your budget cycle at the end of the year. If you do monthly reforecast, you can bring in individual months at any time. Okay.
All right, no more questions right now.
Okay. Much more quieter crowd than yesterday. Okay, I want to mention also adjustments and allocations. So inside the forecaster, if you're doing your budget process, at some time you may want to allocate lump sum balances to different departments. It's an easy process inside forecaster. All the allocations are set up under setup, budgets, and allocations. Here I've got 4 different allocations that have been defined. It's easier to see these if I right-click and go to the allocation worksheet. I've got these 4 rows that have 4 separate definitions for these allocations. We tell forecaster where is the money originally stored, what department and account number is the balance stored to. We tell forecaster where you're going to allocate that money out to, what account number and list of departments. There's a contra account, so if you are allocating out $1 million, a negative $1 million gets posted to some contra account. And you can allocate this based on the value of some other account, like maybe square footage or revenue or anything else. Or you can allocate that money based on fixed percentages that never change. And once you have these definitions, these are executed in a task, kind of like a macro in Excel. All the calculations run in the background, and it stores the results in the SQL database. So easy to set these up. It's just a matter of determining where the money is stored, where it's going to be allocated out to, what's the contra account, and are we allocating on the value of some other account or fixed percentage. And as a budget administrator, once you have these set up and you get ready to run these, you would go to Data and Task, find the allocation definition that you want to execute, just right-click and run it. Those run very quickly, and you can run the allocations as often as you need to. Every time you run it, it does not double up the money. It will overwrite or recalculate those balances. Let me know if you have any questions about allocations. I'll be glad to come back to those if we do. Think about the budget administrator towards the end of the budget cycle. You've got everybody's budget balances inside forecaster. They're all consolidated. You're going through meetings to review those numbers. And a lot of times people say, well, what if we reduce payroll by 10% or some other expense by 25% or whatever else? That's easy done inside forecaster with the adjustment wizard. The budget administrator can go to Setup, Budgets, and Adjustments. And this one window will help you adjust those balances at one time. Top left here, what departments do we want to adjust and what accounts do we want to adjust? You can adjust individual departments or summary of departments as well. So if I want to adjust everything in the West, for what account number, it can do individual account numbers or roll-ups or summaries of accounts. What if I just want to adjust our travel account? On the right-hand side, we tell forecaster what periods we want to adjust. And it could be that you want to adjust budget 2016 January only. It might be that you pick February and March as well. You just highlight which month or period that you do want to adjust. And if I go from January down through December, I'll do the whole year. At the bottom right, you can adjust these existing balances up and down by dollar amounts or by percentages. So if I do percentage, -10, when I click Adjust, Forecaster goes out and will take all the budget balances in the Western departments for the travel account and reduce their amounts by 10%. So easy done. This runs very quickly and adjust that budget, and you see the results immediately in the reports inside Forecaster. Some people like to keep the budget as it is and have a copy of the budget and use that for their adjustments and their what-if scenarios. That's fine too. That way you'll always have that original budget. We use the copy plan wizard to copy those balances in the budget from the original copy to a what-if copy, and then you can play with those numbers in the what-if copy all you need to. Looking back at data input, I'll go back to last year's budget that was already completed. And I'll jump back to the department that I had started off with, which was New York Manufacturing. Your budget managers, when they come to these screens, spreadsheet style layout, they should not have to have a lot of training on how to get in and out of these screens. They really will spend most of their time right here under data and input. One pop-up box, just 2 drop-down selections, and you limit what they see here in these drop-down selections. They would not see all these old ones. They would just see 2016 when they started off. So not a lot of confusion for them on their part for input. They may not even have the tabs up top for single row, human resources, capital, and revenue. You restrict that to by individual user. So you may have an HR person that handles everybody's human resource tab, so all your other budget managers will not see any of these other 4 tabs. They'll just have this main one for multi-row. So when you set up the security, you control all that access, whether they even see these extra tabs at the top. You control what departments they have access to with security. So when they have the screen open and they want to go to the open folder up top, they have lookups for all the list of departments. And if they only have access to Chicago, they would only see these few for Chicago. They would not even see anything from New York on this pop-up window or the Midwest or anything else, just Chicago for them. All that set up in security inside Forecaster. So any questions about the multi-row tab here? Or I can look at any of the other tabs for single row, human resources, capital, revenue. Again, those are all pretty straightforward and easy for your budget managers. Human resources is probably the most complicated for them. There's a lot of columns, although you can hide some of this stuff if you do not want them to allow for pay changes throughout the year. If you don't have bonuses, we can take off those columns. So you can edit this screen for HR and make it easier for their input. And again, when they log in, this is their department. They do not see people from other departments or other pay rates or anything like that. They only see their people.
No other questions at this time, Noah.
Okay, good deal. And it is coming up on the end of the year. A lot of people are getting ready for their budget cycles. That is, they're installing Forecaster or they're copying stuff up from last year. It takes usually about a week if you are going to do a brand new installation of Forecaster and set up for the budget. That's our quick start. And you can really roll it out to your budget managers in a week's time and have their input screens available. If you have more complicated budget requirements, if you're handling multi-currency, it could take longer than a week. But there is that 1 week quick start. And usually that's a very intensive week with the budget administrator, setting up the chart of accounts inside Forecaster, setting up all the input screens, the security, the reporting, allocations. Very intensive. We usually on-site with the budget administrator side by side. I want to mention if you after today's session. I'll go back to the slides for just a minute. If you need assistance, I've got a page here on the screen. For additional information, our website has forums and message boards available. If you're already using Forecaster, if you're looking for more information about Forecaster, we've got videos out there for you. We do have training classes, webinars, and consulting services we offer. In December, we are offering a day of training on Forecaster. It's a half-a-day training. It's all online, all free. You've got the website address there for that. You'll have that in these PowerPoint slides when we email those out next week. And in April, we have a whole day of training on Forecaster, really tailored towards budget administrators. So you can log in with us anytime during that day, log in and out as often as you need to. It's all online, all free. If you need me after today's session, my email is on the screen there, noah.moseley@msxgroup.com. Feel free to email me if you have questions about Forecaster. And on this next slide, I want to mention this. If you're going to be in Reno next week, look for me in the expo hall or in some of the sessions I'll be teaching. I'm flying out there Sunday night. I'll be there all week doing several sessions on Forecaster and Management Reporter. And we'll have a booth in the expo hall as well, booth number 343. Curious, Jason, if anybody has any, how many people will be out there next week. If you want to throw that into the Q&A box, just let us know. It's always good to kind of tie a voice to a face so you meet people in person. And these conferences are a great option to do that. This is through Dynamic Communities for all the GPAX people out there. NAV too, I think. Yeah. I know Jason will be out there as well.
I will. If you spot me, please do say hello. MS Dynamics World is a media sponsor at the event.
Good deal. So, Jason, I think I'll wrap it up and see if any other questions we have out there. I'd be glad to jump back to anything inside Forecaster. We'll have these slides available to you right after this call, Jason.
That's right. I'm not seeing any other questions right now. Let me check one more time.
Okay.
So what's the licensing cost for Forecaster?
So check your licenses. They have been very generous with the licensing lately with Forecaster, even giving out unlimited in a lot of situations. The individual prices, we don't sell the licenses ourselves, so the partners do the licenses for us. But pull up your existing license for everything else. You'll have a section that lists Forecaster. It'll show your number of users there. It may be unlimited. So, and also, it's a free download to install Forecaster. So you already own the software. There's no annual fee to renew it. Whatever user licenses you have, they do not expire. So several pluses there when you consider the cost of this budgeting solution versus something else.
All right. I'm not seeing any other questions, so we can start wrapping up here. As Noah said, we recorded today's event. We'll be making that available to all of you, as well as the slide deck. With that, well, let me just take a moment to, Noah, just say thank you to you for taking the time to present to our audience once again here.
No problem, Jason. It's good being here. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. With that, we will conclude the event. Please do look for the survey as you exit. We really appreciate the feedback. Our speakers do as well. It really helps to plan future events. So thanks again, and have a great day.